Hey guys, so I'm basically going to be explaining my code for my final project for the advanced collage. And I'll just kind of go through each LO that I use because I use 7 of them, and I'll discuss like what it is and how I used it. So first off, to start off, we'll talk about variables, and basically I'll explain kind of what each one is as I go. So what a variable is basically is it's a named memory location that holds a specific data type, like an int, double, or an object. And the way that it's used is basically they allow the program to remember and persist information so it can be manipulated or passed around like later on. And how it's used is basically you declare, or how I used it is I declared an object variables like picture pic1 and picture pic2. And basically that was to store image data in memory. As I mentioned before, like you can store it in memory. And this basically ensures that the photos persisted through the entire main method, so that way I could apply filters to them, and then I eventually merge them into the final collage variable. So next we'll talk about LO2, which I used, which was methods, and basically what it is it's invoking a pre-written block of code belonging to an object or a class. And the way that this is used is basically it allows you to trigger complex behaviors, pass in parameters to customize the action, and then basically it receives a return value. So the way that I used it is basically was I invoked p1.getPicture with width 342 on the object p1, and basically I passed the parameter 342 to define the new size, and the method returned a new resize picture object, which I then stored and then used. So next I'll talk about LO3, which was writing methods. Basically what that is basically it's creating your own named block of logic with a specific header, parameter list, or return type. And the way that it's used in code is basically it allows for the code modularity and reuse, meaning that basically you can write the logic once and then call it multiple times. And so like how I use this in my code is basically I basically made the scanline shift filter and then parentheses int threshold method, and basically I defined it to take an int parameter, which gives the power to change how a filter looks every time that you call it. And yeah, so that's basically how I used writing methods, as you can see. And then next I'll talk about arrays from LO4, which I also used in my code. So basically what an array is it's a collection of data elements of the same type stored in an index structure, and basically like it's 1D or 2D. And so the way that it's used is arrays are the standard way to organize large amounts of data, so like the thousands of pixels that make up a single image. And basically how I use this is basically in get pixels 2D, I accessed a single dimensional array, pixel array, and basically manipulated its contents into a 2D array, just pixels and then double brackets pixels. And this basically allowed you to access specific pixels using basically row and column coordinates. Okay, so next I'll talk about loops from LO5. And basically what that is it controls structures like for and while, and basically those structures, they repeat a block of code until a condition is met. So the way it's used is like basically nested loops are used to visit every element in a grid like an image, while while loops basically are used for like tasks with an unknown number of repetitions, like waiting for a user to type the correct thing in basically. And so like the way I used it in my code is I use nested loops to iterate through every row and column of my images, And basically, I also implemented a while loop in advanced collage.java, and that was to repeatedly prompt the user for a threshold until they entered a valid number in. So basically, would just keep repeating until they enter what they're supposed to enter in. So yeah, that's basically how loops work and how I used it. And next, we'll talk about LO6, which was user input. And so for user input, what a user input is, first of all, is basically, it's for capturing data from a human, which is the user, through the keyboard or graphical interface. And the way that it's used is basically the scanner class monitors the system input stream to make a program interactive and dynamic. So it's kind of like a way that you can have the user basically input stuff. And how I used it was basically, I used the scanner object in my main method, and this allowed the user to type a blue intensity threshold, as you can see in a second when I type it in, to run my code. And basically, it allows the user to type that into the console, and that'll directly change the appearance of the pink lines in the final collage. So that's basically how I implemented user input into my code, to make it so that way like the user could kind of affect how the picture will look, the whole collage will look. So next for LO7, which is conditional execution. So basically what that is it's using an if or if-else statement to execute code only when certain logical conditions are true. So how it's used is it basically allows the program to make decisions and branch into like different paths of logical basis of data values. So the way I use this in my code is in my scanline shift filter, I used an if statement with a condition like double and symbol, and basically the program decided to color a pixel magenta only if the row was a multiple of 4 and the blue value of that specific pixel was higher than the user's threshold. So that's basically how I used conditional execution from LO7 in my code. And then, so now I'll basically run the code and compile everything so that way you can see the final result of my advanced collage. Yeah, thank you.